What's going on, YouTube? I'm D. Ellis. I want to welcome y'all back to another episode of Crime Circuit. Um, this video is educational purposes only. Um, I suggest that if you guys are sensitive to murder, kidnapping, this video is also going to be covering torture, brutal torture. So everything that I found on this case is strictly on the internet. It's public information. Make sure you guys like, share, comment, and subscribe. But once again, if you guys are sensitive to that kind of content in this video, then I suggest that you guys click out, and hopefully I will see you in another video. With all that being said, condolences to the both families in this case that we're going to be covering, which is the murders of Channon Christian and Christopher Newsom. All right, let's get into the intro. Channon Christian, age 21, and Hugh Christopher Newsom Jr., age 23, were from Knoxville, Tennessee. They were kidnapped on the evening of January 6th of 2007. When Christian's vehicle was carjacked, the couple were taken to a rental house. Both of them were raped, tortured, and then murdered. 4 males and 1 female were arrested, charged, and convicted in this case. Now, in 2007, a grand jury indicted Latavius Darnell Cobbins, Lamarcus Duval Davidson, George Giovanni Thomas, and Vanessa Lynn Coleman on counts of kidnapping, robbery, rape, and murder. Also in 2007, Eric Dwayne Boyd was indicted by a federal grand jury of being an accessory to carjacking, resulting in serious bodily injury to another person and misprision of a felony. In 2018, Boyd was indicted on state-level charges for kidnapping, robbery, rape, and murder. 4 of the 5 defendants, Eric Boyd, Latavius Cobbins, Lamarcus Davidson, and George Thomas, had multiple prior felony convictions. After a jury trial, Davidson was convicted and sentenced to death by lethal injection. Cobbins and Thomas were convicted and sentenced to life in prison without parole. Now, Vanessa Coleman was indicted and convicted on facilitating the crimes and sentenced to 53 years in prison. Eric Boyd, on the other hand, was convicted at the federal level and sentenced to 18 years in federal prison for being accessory after the fact to carjacking. He was convicted on state-level charges over a decade later in 2019. All of the state convictions were initially set aside because of the misconduct of the presiding judge, who has since been disbarred. Retrials were originally slated for the summer and fall of 2012. The orders of retrials of Davidson and Cobbins were subsequently overturned by the Tennessee State Supreme Court, and their convictions and sentences stand. The Coleman and Thomas retrials resulted in convictions, but with a reduced sentence for Coleman and the same sentence for Thomas. Now, controversy arose due to differing impersonations regarding the media's coverage for the murders. Many people believed that the crimes were ignored because the victims were white while the perpetrators were black. Others, including journalists, disagreed with this assertion. Efforts have been made to remember and honor Christian and Newsom. In 2014, new laws named after the victims were introduced in Tennessee. Both victims also had memorials and scholarships named after them. The victim, Channon Christian, was born April 29, 1985, in Texas. Moved from Louisiana to Tennessee with her family in 1997. She was a graduate of Farragut High School 2003 and a senior majoring in psychology at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. She planned on graduating in December of 2007. Christian was 21 years old when she was murdered. Hugh Christopher, or also Chris Newsom Jr., born September 21st, 1983, also in Knoxville, was a former baseball player for the Halls High School Red Devils. He would graduate in 2002. After high school, he attended Pellissippi State Technical Community College and became a carpenter. Newsom was 23 years old when he was murdered. Okay, guys, before we get into the actual details of the murders, I suggest that this part right here is graphic content. I suggest that you click out now. With all that said, let's get into it. On Saturday, January 6th of 2007, Christian and Newsom planned to go for dinner together and attended a friend's party. That afternoon, Christian went to a friend's apartment to get ready. Around 8 p.m., Christian's friend went to the party and Christian stayed behind and waited for Newsom to pick her up. Newsom arrived, and he and Christian went to the apartment complex parking lot. Now, the assailants observed Christian and Newsom standing close to Christian's vehicle in an embrace. They then decided to attack the couple, and both were forced into the back seat of Christian's SUV at gunpoint, had their hands tied behind their backs, and were taken to Davidson's house at 2316 Chipman Street. Both Christian and Newsom were raped. Newsom is believed to have been raped inside Davidson's house, according to the testimony of the Knox County acting medical examiner. Newsom was sodomized with an object and raped by a minimum of one of the perpetrators. He was then taken to a set of railroad tracks where he was forced to walk barefoot to a location where he was murdered. Prosecutors believe a mangled dog leash found on a hillside leading up to the railroad tracks was used to force Newsom to walk to his death. When Newsom was murdered, his hands were bound behind his back and his feet were bound together. He was blindfolded with a bandana and gagged with a sock. He wore only a shirt and underwear. Newsom was shot in his neck and his back. Newsom survived this shooting initially, but was later shot again in the head. The fatal shot fired with the gun's muzzle against his head above his right ear and severed his brainstem. After killing Newsom, the assailants set his body on fire. Christian was held prisoner inside Davidson's home, mostly in the north side of the bedroom. Prosecutors believe that Coleman held Christian captive while the male offenders were murdering Newsom. After murdering Newsom, the assailants returned to Davidson's house where they beat and repeatedly raped Christian. The medical examiner testified that Christian died hours after the sexual torture, sustaining several head injuries and suffering severe injuries to her vagina, anus, and mouth due to sexual assaults. Her injuries were consistent with being raped with an object, according to the medical examiner. The sexual attack Christian endured was extreme and much more simple than a sexual assault. Prosecutors believe that Christian was tied to a chair and orally raped by Davidson and Cobbins. These pieces of shit right here, I'll tell you. Christian was also anally and vaginally raped. She was also beaten, kicked in her groin, and beaten on the head. Christian suffered extensive hemorrhaging to her head and groin. Additionally, Christian suffered bruises and carpet burns much on her body. According to Davidson's confession, during Christian's captivity, she would say, "I don't want to die." Now, before killing her to remove DNA evidence, Christian's attackers poured bleach down her throat and scrubbed her body, including, all the areas. Um, Christian was bound in a hogtied fashion with curtains and stripes of bedding. Her face was tightly covered with a small trash bag, and her body was stashed in 5 large trash bags. Christian was naked except for she had a sweater on and tied in a fetal position, placed inside a residential waste disposal unit and covered with sheets. The medical examiner testified at the trial that there was evidence Christian slowly suffocated to death. Christian died between the afternoon of January 7th and the afternoon of January 8th. As Christian was suffocating to death, Davidson left to spend time with his girlfriend and gave her Christian's personal items. Davidson also used Newsom's cell phone and was seen wearing Newsom's shoes. After Christian and Newsom did not show up at the party, the couple's friends began calling and texting them and received no response. Later, at around 11 p.m., 2 of Newsom's friends went to the apartment where the couple had been kidnapped and found Newsom's truck in the parking lot. They were unable to locate Christian's SUV. Now, a witness who worked as a driver for Waste Connections arrived at work on Chipman Street around 12:30 a.m. on January 7th. He would go on to say that he noticed that the lights at 2316 Chipman Street were on at that house and seemed busy for a time of the night. He saw a 4Runner in front of the house with its porch lights on. The witness later observed the 4Runner drive slowly by him. The car slowed down for about 20 seconds as if the occupants were checking him out. He saw 4 black men in the car. Another witness who lived around the block from 2316 Chipman Street heard 3 pops from the direction of the train tracks around 1:45 a.m. Newsom's body was discovered near a set of nearby railroad tracks on January 7th at 12:20 p.m. by a Norfolk Southern Railroad employee. Though there was no semen inside of Newsom's body, DNA in the semen had been destroyed by the fire. A comforter was wrapped around Newsom's body, and a sweatshirt was wrapped around his head. His bare and muddy feet indicated that he had been walking barefooted to the area where he was killed. On January 7th, Christian failed to answer calls from her mother and friends. Christian also did not attend work. The couple's friends and families tried to find them, checking local hospitals, filing missing persons report, and Christian's parents requested help from law enforcement, but were told that they would have to search for themselves. They then sought up help from Christian's mobile phone provider and learned that her phone had last been pinged at Cherry Street phone tower. Christian and Newsom's families and friends searched the Cherry Street area and found Christian's abandoned Toyota 4Runner between 1:30 a.m. and 2 a.m. on Monday, January 8th. Now, several items were missing from Christian's vehicle, including a teddy bear and photographs Christian kept there, and her phone charger and iPod. The front seats were pushed back, and Christian could not have reached the pedals. The floorboard was covered with mud, inconsistent with how Christian maintained her vehicle. Stickers Christian kept on the outside of the windows had been removed. Inside of the vehicle was a pack of Newport cigarettes, even though neither Christian or Newsom smoked them. Police also recovered an envelope from the vehicle that yielded fingerprint evidence leading them to LaMarcus Davidson of 2316 Chipman Street, an address 2 blocks from Christian's car. When police went to 2316 Chipman Street on Tuesday, January 9th, they found the house unoccupied and Christian's body in a trash can in the kitchen. Christian's body was stashed in 5 large trash bags. The bags had Davidson's prints. Davidson's prints were also found on a box of garbage bags. Also inside the house were several items that belonged to Christian and Newsom, including Christian's purse, clothing that she had in her vehicle, Christian's shoes, her camera, and her photographs, which were ripped and burned, an iPod and Newsom's baseball caps, and driver's license. Several of the victims' belongings had Davidson's prints. The items from Christian's SUV were shoved into trash bags. In addition to the sperm found on Christian's body, shell casings found at Davidson's house matched the bullets used to kill Newsom. Now, after finding Christian's body and discovering the presence of Davidson's semen on her clothing and in her cavities, police undertook a manhunt for Davidson. After receiving phone calls between Davidson and Boyd, they asked Boyd for information regarding Davidson's whereabouts. Boyd directed them to a vacant house on January 11th. Davidson was arrested in that vacant house. There, police found Newsom's size 9.5 Nike Shox athletic shoes and a .22 caliber high-standard revolver. Davidson was then interrogated about the murders. He told 5 different stories, first claiming that he had left the house on Friday and knew nothing of the crimes. He later told police that Cobbins and Thomas arrived at the house around 10 p.m. on Friday or Saturday and informed him that they had carjacked some people who were in the vehicle. Davidson also claimed he saw the victims tied up in the back seat, did not want any part of it, and left to go smoke marijuana. He said he returned to the house about 20 minutes later to find Christian, who told him that she did not want to die. He then used Christian's vehicle to deal drugs and then wiped it clean. Davidson claimed that he did not go past the living room and that he never raped Christian. On January 11th, Thomas, Cobbins, and Coleman were arrested in Lee Banning, Kentucky. Police seized a computer which Thomas and Cobbins had been viewing news coverage of the murders. Police also seized a purse that contained several items of Christian's belongings, including her cosmetic bag and a change purse. Additionally, police found Christian's overnight bag as well. Cobbins gave a statement to investigators claiming that he, Davidson, and Boyd drove to an apartment complex for someone to meet a girl. When they would arrive, they saw an SUV with the female in the driver's seat. She was speaking to a male. Davidson and Boyd basically carjacked them and ordered Cobbins to drive back to Chipman Street. Now, according to Cobbins, Davidson took the woman into a bedroom once they arrived at the residence, and Boyd drove away with the man. Boyd later returned without the male victim. Cobbins denied having any sexual intercourse with the female victim. Coleman admitted to being present in the house during the crimes, claiming that she had only been held hostage by the other defendants. George Giovanni, also known as Detroit Thomas, born January 23, 1983, faced a total of 46 charges. Thomas was indicted on 16 counts of felony murder related to rape, robbery, and kidnapping committed against Christian and Newsom, 2 counts of premeditated murder, 2 counts of especially aggravated robbery, 4 counts of especially aggravated kidnapping, and 20 counts of aggravated rape, and 2 counts of theft. Latavius Darnell Rome Cobbins, born December 20th, 1982, faced the same 46 charges as Thomas. He was also charged with assaulting a correctional officer while incarcerated pending trial. In 2003, Cobbins had been convicted of third-degree attempted robbery in New York. He and Davidson are half-brothers. LaMarcus Duval Slim Davidson, born June 13th, 1981, faced also the same 46 charges as Thomas. Davidson was originally from Memphis and had just in August of 2006 completed a 5-year sentence in Tennessee on a previous felony conviction for carjacking and aggravated robbery. Davidson was also indicted for a second robbery committed at a Pizza Hut 1 day after the murders. Vanessa Lynn Coleman, born June 29, 1988, was arrested by the Lebanon Police Department in her hometown of Lebanon, Kentucky. She faced 40 Tennessee state charges. Coleman indicted on 12 counts of felony murder related to rape, robbery, kidnapping, and theft. 1 count of premeditated murder of Christian only. 1 count of especially aggravated robbery of Newsom only. And 4 counts of especially aggravated kidnapping, also with 20 counts of aggravated rape and 2 counts of theft. Eric Dwayne E. Boyd, born February 18, 1972, was arrested in connection with the fatal carjacking. He was not indicted by the Knox County Grand Jury in 2007, but was indicted by the federal grand jury by the Eastern District of Tennessee on August 23rd of 2007. The grand jury returned a superseding indictment charging him with accessory to a carjacking resulting in serious bodily injury to another person and misprision of a felony. Later, Boyd was accused by Thomas and Collins of the rape and murder of Newsom, and a search warrant was obtained for his DNA. He was tried on state charges more than a decade later in 2019. That's going to conclude this episode of Crime Circuit. I'm D. Ellis. Make sure you guys like, share, comment, and subscribe. Condolences to the Christian and Newsom family. This case right here was extremely difficult to read and digest. The heinous acts of this fucking crime is just insane. These are the type of people that, should get the worst of the worst. I'm not really going to get into detail of that, but, condolences to the family once again. Make sure you guys like, share, comment, and subscribe. I'm D. Ellis. This is Crime Circuit.